everybody, welcome back to Let's Talk Physical Media. I am your host, John. This is the weekly show where we talk all things in the world of film and, of course, physical media. And every single week, we like to start the show off with the news. And it really wasn't a very busy week in the world of physical media, actually. We got some announcements, more rumors. None of the boutique labels had any big announcements that they wanted to share with the world. I imagine that Arrow Video and Shout/Scream Factory are going to be announcing their November stuff pretty soon. I wouldn't even be surprised if Shout Factory announces their stuff this upcoming Monday, because they usually roll their stuff out on a Monday. But we did have some announcements, and one that was pretty fascinating is Paramount is going to be releasing Breakdown, the Kurt Russell film, solely on its own. I believe at the exact same time that they're going to be releasing their Paramount Scares or Screams collection. I can always forget which one is which. Is it Scares? Is it Screams? But either way, that collection included a bunch of other movies, including Friday the 13th Part 2, which I believe is also going to be getting its own solo release. But from what I understand, that one right now is only going to be getting released in the UK. It might get announced for a US release as well. And then that's also going to have the second Orphan film and World War Z on 4K Blu-ray. But now you can buy Breakdown, which is the only film I really wanted to buy in that collection anyway, because I'm not going to upgrade Friday the 13th Part 2. Not the biggest fan of that film, and I have it anyway in their Shout Factory release with all of the other Friday the 13th films, so I don't feel the need to upgrade that to 4K Blu-ray. But I really want Breakdown, so I'm really excited that that is going to be getting a 4K Blu-ray release on its own. Well-deserved. It's a very good 1990s thriller. And then everything else is pretty much rumored, but almost confirmed. The big one that I'm pretty sure is going to be confirmed pretty soon is that The Conversation, the Francis Ford Coppola film that came out the very same year as The Godfather Part 2, that stars Gene Hackman, which is a fantastic film, which just got restored by Studio Canal, and I believe just got a Studio Canal 4K Blu-ray release. When that happens, usually the United States has a 4K Blu-ray release coming pretty soon. It looks like Lionsgate is going to be releasing a 4K Steelbook for The Conversation, and when that gets officially announced, which it looks like it's going to be coming out in November, I'll be picking that up on 4K Blu-ray, because The Conversation is a great film as well. I was actually going to grab that Studio Canal collection because it is beautiful. They really went out and gave us all the bells and whistles for that UK release, but this way I don't have to import it. It'll be a little bit cheaper, so I'll probably grab that United States release. And then another one is apparently Horizon and American Saga Part 2 is going to be getting a 4K Blu-ray release. Now, this was supposed to come out in theaters this month. Actually, I think this very week, actually. It was supposed to be getting a theatrical run. Horizon and American Saga Part 1 came out back in June. It bombed at the box office, got pulled pretty damn fast to the point where I couldn't even check it out. And then, they pulled Horizon American Saga Part 2 from theaters, and they said, we don't think it's worth it, but it looks like it's going to be getting a 4K Blu-ray release, and I'm guessing depending on the sales of Horizon Part 1 and Part 2, we'll see the completion of the saga, and maybe Parts 3 and 4 will get released in theaters. I know that they're making Part 3 because they're shooting it right now. I don't know if they're going to decide to, put 3 and 4 in the one film, wrap it up with a nice bow so that they don't spend any more money. I'm not entirely sure, but I am glad that Horizon American Saga Part 2 will at least get a straight-to-video release. It does kind of feel a little disappointing. I mean, I didn't get to see Horizon Part 1 in theaters, and that 4K Blu-ray I still believe is $39.99. It hasn't dropped in price at all. I haven't pre-ordered it yet because that's a little too high priced for my taste. I can't really justify spending almost $40 on a 4K Blu-ray. That's a little bit tough for my taste, so I'm hoping that drops down to below 30, and then I'll grab that on 4K Blu-ray. And then the last one, and this is a rumor that apparently, I guess, Jeff Daniels tipped this off, and it does make a lot of sense, and that is that Dumb and Dumber is going to be coming to 4K Blu-ray pretty soon. Now, that's a New Line Cinema film, so it's Warner Brothers owned, so I imagine that would be a WB 4K Blu-ray release, and my guess is that that will be coming out in December, because that's when Dumb and Dumber came out. It's celebrating its 30th anniversary this December. You guys have heard me talk a million times how Jim Carrey in 1994 released in February Ace Ventura. He was really a up-and-coming star thanks to In Living Color, and then that movie came out and he became an even bigger star. Then that summer, The Mask came out in theaters, and now this guy's just shot like a rocket to the moon. And that December, we got Dumb and Dumber. And because he did so good in those first two movies, they were both #1 hits at the box office. Dumb and Dumber also became a #1 hit at the box office, that he was able to renegotiate his deal because he hadn't yet signed his contract for Dumb and Dumber and was able to get paid a lot more money than they were planning to pay him. But you know what? Well-deserved. It paid off. Dumb and Dumber was a hit. And let's just pretend that anything associated with Dumb and Dumber other than the original 94 film doesn't exist. We could just pretend Dumb and Dumber 2 and Dumber never happened, because in my opinion, they didn't happen. That was really it as far as news goes. Haven't really heard too much else other than the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, the original film, which got a 4K Steelbook release earlier in the year. It's going to be getting a standard 4K Blu-ray release, which, if I didn't get that 4K Steelbook, I don't imagine I'm going to get the 4K Blu-ray standard, because really the Steelbook is the nicer option. It looks like SpongeBob, but other than that, not too many other announcements, so hopefully we'll get some more big announcements next week. But of this news, what did you guys think? Let me know in the comments section below what you guys thought of the physical media announcements for this week. Also, let me know what you guys thought of Alien Romulus. I saw that last week. It was pretty good. The new Crow movie came out this week. I don't know how I feel about that still. At the time of recording, I haven't seen it yet, so let me know what you guys thought of The Crow down in the comments section below, and let's move on to this week's Q&A portion of the show. And the first question this week is from Kevin Kruger, and he wrote, Top 10 movies that don't have a happy ending, and I made a list for this, and at number 10, I got The Departed. Now, this is a lot of fun, this movie. It feels a lot like other Martin Scorsese movies, The Wolf of Wall Street, Goodfellas, Casino, even though all those movies also don't really have happy endings. At the end of Goodfellas, he just ends up like an everyday schnook, so of course that's not a happy ending. Wolf of Wall Street, also not a happy ending. It just becomes a regular Joe, but in my opinion, he really should have, Jordan Belfort should have done more prison time, so I guess it's kind of a happy ending for him. But The Departed, nobody wins. I mean, everybody dies in this freaking movie. Just at the very end, finally, Matt Damon gets his comeuppance, which is good, because he's the worst of the worst, in my opinion, when it comes to that movie. So Mark Wahlberg, finishes him off and just walks right out the front door of his apartment. And then, of course, we see the rat, which is just beating imagery over the head, and that's fine and all, but still, The Departed, not a happy ending, but that movie, of course, is fantastic. I love The Departed. Jack Nicholson is great in it. He's having a great time in it. Leonardo DiCaprio is good in it, and like I was saying, Matt Damon, he gives the best performance in this movie, because I just absolutely hate him, and Matt Damon, that's a great performance. He's playing the antagonist, does a good job at it, so of course I'm going to put The Departed at number 10. At number 9, Castaway. Now this movie, it's really just a one-man show. It's Tom Hanks showing off, directed by Robert Zemeckis. He made this movie in the year 2000. Tom Hanks actually, had to shoot this. They shot it in intervals because he had to gain all the weight to look like the regular guy, and then of course all those years to the island, he's got to grow the beard out, lose a lot of weight. But when the poor bastard gets back home, his girl, Helen Hunt, she's moved on. She just assumed he was dead. She never expected this. She's dating a dentist now, and they have a kid together, and he's, being the stand-up guy that he is, he's not going to ask her to break up with her husband for him. It's a hard moment, man, when they're, sitting there talking to each other at her front door, and, she gives him back the keys to his car. It's raining out. Man, what a sad moment. Of course, they want to end it on a glimmer of hope at the very end with the last shot of the movie, but still, not a happy ending for this guy who just, got off an island all alone for 4 years, but of course, he's got to have a little bit of hope. And at number 8, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Again, this one kind of ends with a little bit of hope, but, they don't get those memories back that they're chasing. Jim Carrey, Kate Winslet, they are fantastic in this movie, directed by Spike Jonze, written by Charlie Kaufman. This might be my favorite movie on this list. Maybe. I love this movie. It takes place on Long Island, the train to Montauk, feels very much like a winter movie. I really appreciate this movie. Dealing with a breakup can be really hard, and the best way to deal with it, erase your memories of the other ones. It's got that sci-fi twist on it. And when Joel decides he wants to do the same exact thing as Kate Winslet and erase the memories of her, we see that struggle to, hold on to the good memories at least. While, realistically, they just wanted the bad memories erased. I also love the little touches of, a person trying to get rid of the memory of their pet that passed away. Those memories, they're hard, but of course, that's what makes us human, is having those memories, having that pain. So Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is a fantastic film. Number 7, Requiem for a Dream. Now, this is a very well-made movie directed by Darren Aronofsky, who makes very well-made movies. He just knows how to direct, but he also knows how to, evoke an emotional response from you. And the emotional response he's trying to get from this movie is anxiety, because, my God, the pacing of this movie moves at such a quick rate. These characters are just using and abusing their body. Jared Leto, Ellen Burstyn. It's a Marlon Wayans giving a dramatic performance as well. Man, it's such a good, well-made movie, but it's a tough watch, and it's an even tougher rewatch. And again, none of these characters come out on top. maybe there's hope. I don't feel like there's any hope at the end of this movie. At number 6, Brokeback Mountain. This is one directed by Ang Lee. It's actually my favorite movie directed by Ang Lee. He's kind of disappointed in me. I have to really go back and rewatch Hulk, but Brokeback Mountain is a fantastic movie. These two guys, they're gay. They live in an era where, that just can't be. They're married. Michelle Williams is there watching her husband. She catches him and she knows what he is, but unfortunately, that time period, you just weren't allowed to be gay, and it's really unfortunate. They really weren't allowed to express themselves, and they had to live a lie essentially their entire lives because society just wouldn't accept them. And then unfortunately, at the very end of this movie, just to really send it home, Jake Gyllenhaal's character just dies. He dies, apparently a tire exploded. Now, I believe he was actually killed, and this is kind of the story that they said. I believe he was killed for being a gay man. And then, of course, Heath Ledger still has his clothes. He smells the man that he was, and that's it. It's not a happy ending. Heath Ledger's got to go on with his life and just live with this. Live with the one love of his life dying, and really, they never even got to explore their relationship. And it's just a really sad ending to this movie, and it's a really well-made movie. Again, it's got a Kino Lorber release. I want to pick that up on one of the 4K Blu-ray sales. One of these days, I will. Number 5, La La Land. This is the second Ryan Gosling movie you'll see on this list. Man, the guy just bad with relationships in film, and in this movie, he's got a relationship with Emma Stone. This movie takes place over the course of 1 year. It's one of the only musicals I truly, really loved. Directed by Damien Chazelle, who made 3 fantastic movies and a really good movie in First Man. But this is one of my favorites from him. One of the only musicals I like. Emma Stone, my favorite actress. Ryan Gosling, he's always good. And really, this one's about following your dreams and hoping that they pay off. But, you can't get everything you want. You can't have your cake and eat it too. And at the very end of this movie, despite this loving relationship, both of them decide they want to pursue their careers. And to do that, they have to go their separate ways. And even though we jump years in the future, we find out, it never did work out for them as a couple. But their lives are successful. So I guess, again, there's some hope in there. But we know that there's just no way that these two are going to work out as a couple. And that's really sad because it seems like they were perfect for each other. And at number 4, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I mean, giving somebody a lobotomy, that's no happy ending for anyone. And Jack Nicholson, the rebel that he was in this movie, unfortunately, he had to finally face the piper for everything that he's done. And he didn't escape with the chief, and he got that lobotomy. And it's really sad at the very end when the chief has to finally, put him down Old Yeller style. And Chief just walks on out of there. And at least there's some hope for him. But yeah, that's it for him. That's it for Jack Nicholson in this movie. And it's really just a sad ending for a lot of characters. Billy Bibbit, that's so horrible what happens. That's the only thing in this movie where I say Nurse Ratched went way too far, because I have an opinion about this movie. And one day I think maybe me and David, aka Shamrock Balls, will explore this movie a little bit more. And I can explore this a lot more in the sense that Nurse Ratched, yes, she is not a hero in this movie. But, for as much as she's labeled the biggest, one of the biggest antagonists in film history, I disagree with that. I mean, Jack Nicholson was pushing her. She still got a job to do. I'll get more into that later. But really, the sad ending for Billy Bibbit and Jack Nicholson's character, and really everyone, I don't really feel like there's much hope at the end of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, other than for the chief. And at number 3, Seven. I mean, finding your wife's head in a box is never a good day. And when you ended the movie with that, and of course, you're going to want to seek revenge because why wouldn't you? I mean, your wife's head was just in a box and you find out she was pregnant too. Yeah, you're going to get your brains blown out. And of course, now the rest of your life, you got to live with this. And should he have done it? No, of course he should have done it. I mean, this guy's a freaking monster, John Doe. And that's how we end the movie. Morgan Freeman's going to retire. And Brad Pitt, I guess, I don't know where he's going. I'm guessing a mental institute for a long, long time. Number 2, Blue Valentine. It's the second time you see Michelle Williams and Ryan Gosling on this list. And this is probably the realest look at a failing relationship that you'll ever see on film. This is a dark, dark movie. And the ending of this movie, again, just leaves you with very little hope. And this whole movie was kind of building to that. It's just a sad, sad movie that's very tough to rewatch. It's even tough to talk about. It's just, that's that kind of movie. And at number 1, Terms of Endearment. I actually just truly love this movie. Think it's a great movie. Deborah Winger does a great job in this movie. But of course, at the very end of it, she ends up getting cancer and dying. And her talking to her kids as knowing that she's going to pass away and they know that she's going to die. I mean, I'll cry every single time, but I will rewatch this movie every single year because every year you do need a good cry. This in My Life is always good for that. And, I just think it's a great movie, but of course she passed away and, her family has to go on without her. It did get a sequel, so we see more of this, but you can ignore that sequel. So that was a great question, Kevin. Thank you so much, buddy. And the next question is from William Thomas. He said, if Disney decided to follow Sony and make a classics box set, which 6 Fox movies would you put in the first volume? So I went with 20th Century Fox films that, I personally love that I would put in, the first big Fox box set, that would really represent what I believe 20th Century Fox was all about, what they were before, Disney got their claws in there and just pretended they don't exist and just took their properties. So for me, at number one, I got Fight Club, David Fincher's 1999 classic Fight Club, really exploring, toxic masculinity, consumerism, all of these messages, and it's just a damn well made movie as well that we know should get a 4K Blu-ray by now, but because Disney owns Fox, we don't got it. Same with The Rock. The Rock is a 1996 film starring Nicolas Cage and Sean Connery. Wouldn't expect them to have as good a chemistry as they do, but they damn sure do, and this is one of the best Michael Bay films. Thankfully, it's very well made. It's obviously a cheesy 1990s action film, but as somebody who loves cheesy 1990s action films, I would love to see The Rock on 4K Blu-ray. And this Fox Disney collection definitely should have it in there. And number three, this already has a 4K Blu-ray release, but I would love to see it, remastered again, even though the 4K Blu-ray we have for it is pretty good because it was actually done by Fox. But when you think of 20th Century Fox, one of the first things you think of is Star Wars: A New Hope. That logo before we get in a galaxy far, far away. Now, it's a little bit different, but back then, seeing that logo in front, hearing the drums and everything like that, that was a pretty big deal. So you got to have A New Hope in there. And if you got to have another classic, the 1979 Ridley Scott classic, Alien. That's another film. When I think of 20th Century Fox, I always think of Alien. I think of Ridley Scott's Alien, the best Alien movie. And you can see with Alien Romulus, took so much inspiration from the original Alien and put it in that movie. And you know what? I can't think of too many better movies to pay homage to, or at least rip right off of, than the original Alien, because it's a stone cold classic. And at number five, now, I'm not the biggest fan of this movie, but every time I watch it, I enjoy it, and I know so many people are a huge fan of this movie, and that's The Devil Wears Prada. People love The Devil Wears Prada. I remember the first time I saw this was actually in a fashion class in high school, and again, everyone loved this movie. It's probably Meryl Streep's, or one of Meryl Streep's best performances. Anne Hathaway has probably never been better. That's also one of the first times a lot of us saw Emily Blunt, who would obviously become a great actress herself. And again, I just think of 20th Century Fox when I think of that movie. And last but not least, and I guess this is one that, is more my taste, and we'll talk about this movie a little bit later in the show, actually, and that's The Day After Tomorrow, Roland Emmerich's The Day After Tomorrow, my favorite disaster film of all time, another one that really deserves a 4K Blu-ray upgrade, and it's just one of those movies that I always think about, and, this would be a little bit more personal taste to have in the box set. I don't know how many other people would agree to this. So, more than likely, if this thing ever really did exist, The Day After Tomorrow probably wouldn't be in it, but I wish it was. And that was a great question. Thank you so much, buddy. I really do appreciate that, William. And the next question's from Emmanuel, and he said, what's a movie you thought you were not going to like, but ended up enjoying? So I got 3 examples of this, and the first one came out this year, was Twisters. When this movie got announced, I was like, come on, are we really doing this? We don't need a sequel to Twister. And then, you see the cast, like, okay, I'm getting a little intrigued. Then the trailers came out, and again, I try not to watch the trailers. I just knew I was going to see the movie anyway. And then when I saw the movie, and I feel like I'm one of the people who like this movie a lot. I don't see as many people or talk to as many people who really enjoyed Twisters, but I really enjoyed Twisters. This is one of my favorite movies of the year, actually. This guy kind of got an emotional reaction out of me. So I went into that movie expecting a mediocre blockbuster film, and what I got was a really enjoyable, great film in my opinion that I can't wait to check out again on 4K Blu-ray. And then another one was Pirates of the Caribbean: Dead Man's Chest, because when the Pirates of the Caribbean: The Curse of the Black Pearl came out, I really wasn't the biggest fan of it. I should have been a huge fan of it. A pirate movie starring Johnny Depp. I believe it was the first PG-13 Disney movie, and I didn't exactly love it. I think it's because I didn't see it in theaters, but I did see in theaters Dead Man's Chest. I actually was in Vegas visiting family at the time, and we went to the movies and saw it, and I was like, holy shit, that was a great movie. And Dead Man's Chest actually at this point still flirts with my favorite Pirates of the Caribbean movie. I only really like the first 3, the original trilogy, but I think all 3 of those movies are really good. I still think, at this point, as I've aged and gotten older, I could see that The Curse of the Black Pearl is the better of the movies, but I still really enjoyed Dead Man's Chest. And I went into that movie because I wasn't excited to see it. It was just kind of those things like, the whole family wants to see it. I'm like, all right, I didn't like Curse of the Black Pearl. And then I left that theater with a shitty grin on my face. So I loved it. And then another one, I saw it with my wife, and this was a movie she wanted to see, and I ended up really liking this movie. And it just actually got a 4K Blu-ray release, I believe, from Second Sight. And that's You're Next. didn't expect anything from this movie, and what I got was a really enjoyable horror film. Have a really good theater experience with it, which is a lot for me. If I have a good theater experience, I give movies a little bit of grace. But this movie was just, overall, it was gory as hell and has a kill that has stuck with me with a blender that you guys should definitely check out. So Your Next is a great one. And that was a great question as well. I really appreciate that. Thank you. And actually, Emmanuel asked us another question. I missed this one. And he said, if you could create your own Criterion collection of at least 5 films, what would they be? They could be any films. And for me, they would be Ratatouille, which is a great film. The Lion King, a great film. The Avengers. Don't love that movie, but I understand why other people do. Spider-Man 2, used to love that movie. And Frankenweenie, which I'm going to review sometime this spooky season. And yes, I made a list of movies that I think speak to me, but also would fit in the Criterion collection. And the other rule I made is it couldn't have been released in the Criterion collection yet. So if the Criterion decided, hey, in the future we're going to release the John Keefe collection of 5 movies that John Keefe represents, or, my own Criterion closet picks and movies that I think should be in there, obviously in number 1, I think The Terminator would fit right in. This isn't the directorial debut of James Cameron, but this is the one that made him famous, made Arnold Schwarzenegger really famous. It's one of the best sci-fi movies ever, one of the best sci-fi horror movies ever. The inspiration this movie had on other films, that's something with the Criterion collection. We have those movies that have inspired other films, really those cornerstone films, movies that really put directors or actors or even producers or writers on the map. This is the one for James Cameron that kind of shot him to superstardom, and before he really kind of became this guy now. And obviously a lot of people heard what James Cameron said pretty damn recently about how, I think we need to go out there and touch grass or leave our mother's basements. I wouldn't have expected anything less from James Cameron. He's kind of a dick sometimes, but again, love his movies. Number 2, Clerks. This movie really needs a 4K Blu-ray release. I believe Paramount is doing it, but I think Criterion would have been the perfect studio because one of the most famous independent films ever, coming out in an era of independent films, Miramax, they were big in the 1990s with that, Pulp Fiction, most of Tarantino's movies throughout the 1990s. So they were huge at the time, and they released Kevin Smith's Clerks. And if you guys have heard me talk about Kevin Smith and Clerks in general and how important that movie is, because Kevin Smith, he did it himself. This guy's working at a convenience store, and at night he's filming his movie. He's like living his dream. He's or at least hoping to live his dream. He gambled on himself. And, that's a huge inspiration on me because that's something I did and still trying to do is gamble on myself and hope it pays off. And, this movie, the inspiration that it is, you can argue that it's not the most beautifully shot movie, but the dialogue still holds up damn well. And it gave us one of the best films from Kevin Smith still to this day. And Kevin Smith, again, seems like one of the coolest dudes on this planet. And number 3, you got it with The Lion King. You have to have The Lion King. For me, nothing is a better example of the Disney Renaissance and what Disney animation can do than The Lion King. Obviously, movies like Bambi were probably more famous. Maybe not today, because this is a huge movie for 90s kids. Taught me a lot about death, taught me a lot about betrayal, all that kind of stuff. It's basically Hamlet. The songs in the movie are great. James Earl Jones, all the other voice actors are great. It's a classic film. It still will get an emotional reaction now to me, despite the fact that this movie came out 30 years ago. And then, of course, number 4, Reservoir Dogs. Why not Pulp Fiction? Well, Pulp Fiction, people were anticipating that more because of Reservoir Dogs. If it wasn't for Reservoir Dogs being a success and Harvey Keitel, putting his stamp on that, and Quentin Tarantino and all the writing and saying, I want to be in this movie, we'll make this movie the way it's supposed to be made, because originally it was going to be a short black and white film, kind of like how Clerks was, but Harvey Keitel read the script and was like, this could be something bigger, and without Reservoir Dogs and everything that happened with that movie, we wouldn't get Pulp Fiction. So I think this one would be more worthy of the Criterion collection. And at number 5 is just a movie that I feel like doesn't get enough love, and I think the Criterion collection would be the perfect place to give it that love, and that's Frequency. This is the Dennis Quaid movie, and I can understand this feels like a cheesy 1990s movie, a little bit schmaltzy, and I get that, but I really do love this movie. It's got that New York feel to it. A guy who could talk to his son over a CB radio 30 years apart, 1969 and 1999, and it's also a good representation of those 1990s films, while you also put a serial killer storyline in the middle of it as well, while having those heartwarming movie moments. And I just think it's one of those special movies that a lot of people haven't checked out. It was a movie that I did very early here on the channel as well, where I reviewed it, because I actually tried to even do a little skit in there, so if you guys go back and watch my Frequency review, I just always had a passion for this movie, and I think it's the most underrated film of all time, in my opinion, and I think the Criterion Collection would be the perfect place to show it off. So that was a great question as well, Emmanuel. Thank you so much, buddy. And the next movie is from Dark Room Reviews, and you guys should head over to his channel as well. Give him a subscribe. He's a great guy, and, he always sends in these great questions, and he wrote, hypothetically, would you see yourself as a director, producer, or screenwriter? Well, I've actually written some scripts with my cousin Dennis. We actually wrote 2 of them. They didn't go anywhere, so I guess I'm not a very good screenwriter. Shocking, right? So, I would always, that's always where I envision myself, is as a screenwriter. Or director just seems like, man, it's going to suck the life out of you because you're in charge. Producer seems like fun. You just kind of have to, go around. This is probably what I'd be the best at, honestly, is going around and talking to people, making sure the movie gets funding, making sure certain things get in the movie. Because I feel like we need more nice producers in Hollywood, because producers sound like, they're the biggest dicks walking around, but their jobs are probably really harder than we realize. So, of course, I understand that, but I think I'd be that friendly producer out there, trying to be like, let's come on, guys, let's all get along, let's get this movie made. I think we're kind of hopefully moving towards a friendlier Hollywood, so I think I could be the best as a producer. That was a great question, Dark Room Reviews. Thank you so much, buddy. And this is from our guy, Sprazy110, and he said, in the past year, what's the longest you've gone without adding a movie to your collection? I would have to say 7 days is probably the biggest gap I've gone this year. With the channel, I try and get at least one new 4K Blu-ray a week so I can review it here on the channel, which obviously hurts my wallet and probably disappoints my wife to no end. But still, I have to buy some movies to, keep the lights on here. So the longest I've probably only gone is 7 days, which is probably really, really bad. That's a good question, Sprazy. And then he said, do you have a predetermined budget for movies? And not really. I mean, I can't really buy the really expensive box sets, but I try and, like I said, usually I'll get, I would say on average about 4 to 12 movies a month, depending on what the month looks like. September, is a very big month, so I'll probably be on the higher end, closer to 10 or 11 movies. And, I try and get them under $30 if I can. Certain movies, it's just almost impossible, especially with the Criterion Collection. But I would love to keep it under, $150 per month because, with the amount of money the channel actually makes, I try and use the money from the channel to actually spend on all the movies. But, honestly, if you guys know how much YouTube pays compared to how much movies cost, it's really hard to do that. So, I have to come out of my own pocket, and then again, disappointing my wife, but, got to get some 4K Blu-rays, and, it's also something I truly love. I love watching movies, and getting the 4K Blu-ray for me, it's like, now I get to rewatch the movie, revisit it. Hopefully, it's an upgrade, and it's something special to me. So, ideally, $150 to $200 is where I should be at, and I would say I usually keep it there. And now with Shop Pay, I can just pay in increments, which makes it a lot easier. That way, I know it's kind of almost like a flat payment. I know what I'm spending each and every single month. For budgetary reasons, it makes a lot of sense. So, I try and keep it in that range. But that was a great question, Sprazy. Thank you, buddy. And we have 2 questions from Mr. Smelly Potato and 1 from Beetlejuice. I don't believe it's the real Beetlejuice, but I appreciate him commenting on the channel. I like to assume it's the real Beetlejuice. And the first one from Mr. Smelly Potato is, Tommy Wiseau asks you to direct a movie with him. What genre of movie do you make? So maybe not everybody knows who Tommy Wiseau is. He's the infamous director of The Room. He seems like a very strange dude. Apparently he spent all his own money to make this movie. Nobody knows where he got this money, but he did. He's also the guy who's famous for making a CGI or a green screened freaking set that looked exactly like the alley that they could have just shot in the back alley. It's insanity. If you ever watch the movie Disaster Artist, I go through the entire thing, and the movie itself is hysterical because it just makes no sense. But it's entertaining because of that. It's one of those, it's so bad, it's good type of movies. So Tommy Wiseau seems like a strange dude. A lot of people have said he seems like an alien. So me and Tommy are making an alien movie. We're going to make a sci-fi movie with aliens in it. That's the kind of movie I think me and him can make, because if he really is an alien, that's the perfect guy to get involved with that. I'm going to have him star in it. Maybe me and him can bounce off each other. I don't know. I want those big sunglasses he has on. So that'd probably be the movie we'd make, Mr. Smelly Potato. I love that question, though. That's a good one. I appreciate that, buddy. And funny enough, his picture is Beetlejuice from Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice. And then our next question is from Beetlejuice. And he said, what are your top 10 disaster slash end of the world movies. So I made a list for this. You're not going to see movies like Titanic on here because I don't think that's like a straightforward disaster movie. I think there's too much going on. Like, the world's not going to end with that movie, and it's just them hitting. It's really just contained to that. Like, so you won't see any like plane crash movies in here, like Flight as well, because the world really doesn't have a threat in there. And I think for the other 10 movies, you can make an argument that there's a threat. So at number 10, I got Knock at the Cabin. We know the world's ending outside and that these characters have one thing they have to do to prevent the world from actually ending. And it's really leaving it up to you and leaving it in your hands. This is like, one of those M. Night Shyamalan thrillers. This is the one I think came out 2 years ago now. I really thought this movie was fantastic, actually. Very well made. Showing off Dave Bautista's skills. It looks like he's going to pop out of that white shirt throughout the entire film. It's just, again, it's asking you the question, what would you do in this situation? And, with the world ending outside, despite the fact that it really takes place in this one small contained area, it does feel like the world is going to end thanks to the news footage that's in this movie. At number 9, this is a really cheesy one with a 4K Blu-ray that really shows off how bad the CGI is in the movie, but I've always enjoyed this movie, and that is The Core. The premise of having to start the core up again is a little bit ridiculous. It doesn't look great because of the bad CGI, but again, it's one of those movies I had a lot of fun with. The cast features a lot of great actors, including Aaron Eckhart, and I just enjoy the movie. I always have. Number 8, This Is the End. This is a comedy film. Features just a stacked cast of actors. James Franco, Seth Rogen, Jonah Hill, Danny McBride, Michael C. Hall with the cocaine stuff in this movie. Him and Rihanna, fantastic. Cameos from so many big actors in this movie. I mean, so many big actors. All of them. It's so funny. And, the world is coming to an end. We don't really know exactly why at the beginning of this movie. Just hysterical scene after hysterical scene. The Backstreet Boys at the very end of this movie. This Is the End takes the end of the world premise and, turns it into a comedy. And then, one of the real dark ones that takes the end of the world premise is Melancholia, directed by Lars von Trier, who makes very dark movies. Stars Kirsten Dunst, Kiefer Sutherland's in this movie, and the world's about to end. And a depressed woman, she starts to come out of that depression knowing that the world is going to end, almost freeing herself, while her sister, now she's the one going into that dark place, despite the fact that she was a little bit more optimistic. So it's actually looking at some social issues, mental illness, and all the while the world is about to end. And I think it's a beautiful film. And at number 6, we know the world is going to end, so we got to send in some oil drillers led by Bruce Willis, and that movie is Armageddon, 1998's Armageddon, directed by Michael Bay. This movie, it's a guilty pleasure for a lot of people, including myself. It's a lot of fun. It was actually in the Criterion Collection. I think the Criterion Collection should just honor that and just release it on 4K Blu-ray one of these days, because it really should come to 4K Blu-ray. And number 5, Don't Look Up. This came out on Netflix, directed by Adam McKay, I think Christmas Day, like 3 years ago. Really enjoyed this movie. I love the satire of it all. The cast, again, is stacked. And at the very end of it, it actually genuinely scared me, the very last scene of this movie, despite the fact of how funny it is throughout this movie, being a satire of our culture. And just how I think we would react in these situations. But again, that stat cast featuring Leonardo DiCaprio, Jonah Hill again, Meryl Streep as the president. I'd vote for her, I guess. Those baseball hats she's wearing are a little bit ridiculous. And we all know who she's trying to spoof in this movie. But I'd still vote for the real Meryl Streep. So that's at number 5. And number 4, I got a tie between Twister and Twisters because I'm not sure which one I like more. Twisters might actually be the one I like more at this point, which I know is a sin as a 90s kid. But I really love Twisters, and Twister is a great one. Now, this one isn't necessarily an end-of-the-world movie, but, these tornadoes look like they could end the world. At number 3, I got Independence Day, directed by Roland Emmerich, an alien invasion movie, but it's more of a disaster movie at the end of the day. We're really there to see the White House blow up and all the, New York City blow up and all these characters going to escape. It really is a summer 1990s blockbuster. That's what they're going for, is that summer blockbuster tone. You're really there to have a good time, not take it that seriously. You're there to watch Jeff Goldblum and Will Smith, smoke cigars in space. I love it. Just a great movie. And now the thing that's disappointing is my number 2 is Mars Attacks, directed by Tim Burton, that also came out in 1996, but was well overshadowed by Independence Day. But I always preferred Mars Attacks. I think it's really underrated. I really think it needs a 4K Blu-ray release. But again, a lot of people don't love this movie. We're out there, though, guys. We are out there. And then at number 1, The Day After Tomorrow. You guys knew this was coming. This is by far my favorite disaster movie, directed by Roland Emmerich. You know, that's the disaster movie king. He loves to make those types of movies. He's really good at it. You know, he's still doing it to this very day. People love Moon. I didn't really care for Moon, but people love Moon. But that would be my top 10, you know, disaster, end of the world type of movies. Beetlejuice. Thank you so much for that question, buddy. That's a lot of fun. And then our last question for the week is from Mr. Smelly Potato, our channel director. And he said, what was a disappointing moment in a movie that instantly made you not like the movie? For me, it was the first 5 minutes of Mortal Kombat Annihilation when they killed off Johnny Cage. And he was my favorite character. Yeah, that would really piss me off, and mine is very similar to that. And it's a big reason why I don't actually truly love this movie in the Terminator franchise, and that's Terminator Dark Fate. So if you've never seen Terminator Dark Fate, I'm going to spoil a moment that happens very early in the movie. But we all love Terminator and Terminator 2. We all agree that those are the two best movies. So, of course, we got to get the requel. You know, we're going to ignore everything that came after Terminator 2. Linda Hamilton's coming back for this movie. But what happened to John Connor after Terminator 2? Well, apparently not too long after that, a Terminator just, you know, decided, hey, I found you guys, and shoots John Connor. Terminator 2 John Connor just blows him away and kills him. And that's it. So everything that happened in Terminator 2... forget about it. Something else happens. Now you can just look at this as an alternate timeline, but man, at that time, that took me right out of the movie. I mean, I was like, really? That's what you're going to do? I felt like my childhood just got shot in the face in the theater. I couldn't believe it. Now, the movie, it is pretty good. I think it is the third best Terminator film overall, but that moment really does take me out of the movie, and I gotta, like, you know, at this point just kind of know it's coming. It really disappoints me. Another one was with Halloween Ends. I mean, when Michael Myers and Corey Cunningham, they're going around father-son style, killing, you know, Michael Myers got his mask on, the real Michael Myers mask, and then this kid's got his handcrafted mask. I'm just like, oh my god, this is what we're doing in this movie? This was not what I thought we were gonna get. Now, I do need to revisit the movie. I keep knocking it, but in theaters, I remember I was with my cousin Matt, and I looked at him, and I'm like, is this serious? And he was like, I don't understand. I really don't understand. Like, I thought we were being pranked. Like, you know, I was like, you know, maybe if that's what they're going for, Danny McBride, like, let's do this in this movie. You know, that'll really piss people off. And I can appreciate the troll job if that's what we're going for. But still, David Gordon Green, you know, he kind of makes these types of movies before he made horror movies. But, man, I was disappointed at the time. That was a huge letdown and would just take me right out of the movie. God, man, at least we get the end of that movie, I guess. But anyway, that would be my answer to that question. Mr. Smelly Potato, thank you for your questions this week, our channel director. And thank you to everybody who sent in questions for this week's episode of Let's Talk Physical Media. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. And if you did, don't forget to hit that like, share, and subscribe buttons. And, you know, of course, we have channel memberships. We have a Friends of the Channel tier. We have a Producers tier. We're going to find Jason Martin and John Doe Juggalo. A Directors tier, where you're going to find Mr. Smelly Potato and Frank from Frank's Media and Reviews. Frank and John Doe Juggalo have great YouTube channels. Really, please go over there and check them out. They're just two great guys with great YouTube channels. And if you guys love physical media and movies, you're not going to find two other guys who love them just as much as you, like Frank and John Doe Juggalo. So thank you guys, and thank you to everybody. If you got no money to throw away, don't worry about it at all. All we really hope is that you enjoyed the video. And if you did, you know, get out in those streets, tell your friends about us, and then we'll be seeing you around.